Hello fellow writers, my name is Laura and welcome to my channel. I've been writing for all of my life and I have learned a lot of things that have been very difficult about writing, and not just the craft of writing, but what it takes to work on your mentality around writing so that you actually can write. So today I'm going to be talking about writing advice. And how to know what writing advice out there is good, and not just good, but what writing advice works for you, because even good writing advice doesn't always work for everybody. So many of you have probably heard writing advice before. When you tell someone you're a writer, it just kind of comes out of the woodwork. Everybody is always wanting to give writing advice, and not even necessarily people who should be giving writing advice sometimes. And that's one of the first things that you're going to want to look for is, like, if you see a piece of writing advice, you want to determine where that piece of writing advice came from, right? Because, I've had writing advices from friends, and like I'll say I'm working on a book, and then people will be like, oh, you should do this, that, and the other thing, right? So one of the things that you want to do first is, is this the type of person that you want to take writing advice from, right? If it's just a friend or a family member, most of the time their writing advice is either going to be misinformed or just basically wrong. Not that they're, trying to give you bad advice, right? But like, they don't know. They haven't been in the industry. They haven't looked. They haven't worked, right? And so, the first thing you want to do is, does this person have any kind of credentials? Have they written before? Have they written for a long time? Do they have any kind of a career? Um, a lot of the writing advice that I get and have gotten are from published authors. And someone doesn't need to necessarily be a published author in order to give good writing advice. That's kind of an easy way to tell that they might be qualified, because obviously if they published a book, somebody has said, that person deserves to publish a book. But these days it's so easy to self-publish that even some people who have published books haven't necessarily earned, the advice that they might be giving out, or the right to give out the advice. And I have not actually published any books, unless you want to count the one that I have posted on Wattpad. It's complete, it's good, it's not traditionally published, it's not self-published, it's on Wattpad. But I have been, like I said, for over a decade, been working on figuring out how to write. Not just the skills of writing, the mental skills of writing, the community, like all that kind of stuff. And, you're going to look at this video and you're going to decide whether or not you think that I am good enough to give you advice, right? And all I can do is put that advice out there, and you can decide what you want to do with it. So once you've heard a piece of writing advice, and then you've evaluated whether or not you're even going to bother to listen to the writing advice, that's when you want to take that piece of writing advice and you want to try it on, right? So let's take a very basic piece of writing advice that you probably all have heard before, which is write every day. You've probably heard published authors say it, you've probably heard writers say it, you've probably heard, your best friend down the street say it. Like, write every day is one of those pieces of writing advice that just is everywhere. And on its face, it's a really good piece of advice, right? If you write every day, you're going to have written, you will make progress on whatever you're writing, and then you will have your book. You will have your book. It's there, it's magical, it's great. The problem with that writing advice is, of course, like I said before, not all advice works for everybody. I, in particular, cannot write every day. I generally have at least one day in my week where I say, I am not going to write on this day. I can write if I want to, but I will never schedule writing on that day. In general, this is one of the things why you have to try it, right? Because some people can, it might be good for you to write every day, have like a time and that you sit down and you write a couple words or 100 words or 500 words or whatever it is. And that consistency will be really good for you. And that's why it's good writing advice. It's good writing advice because it will give you consistency. It will give you word count. It will, get stuff done. But you need to sit down with it, try it out for a couple of weeks and figure out whether or not it's working for you. Because what I found out with trying to write every day is that, number one, the consistency schedule of writing every day just doesn't work. My weekends look a lot different than my weekdays. And so there's not like one time that I can sit down and write and have it work. And then I also I very clearly have a well that I fill up, and then I, am able to write using that creative juice in my well. And then that dries up, and I need to be able to refill that. Watch other media, read other media, ingest creativity, go out and take a walk, touch grass, all that kind of stuff in order to refill that. And I just know that that's what works for me because I've tried it, right? So when I say try a piece of advice, you want to be able to do it for a decent amount of time such that you know whether or not it works. If it's advice like write every day, you could probably try it for 2 weeks, maybe, 3 weeks, depending on what your schedule is. And by the end of that time, you'll be like, this either works or it doesn't. If it's a piece of writing advice like every time you finish a chapter, you want to go through and make sure you balance out the exposition versus the dialogue versus the description and make sure that, one of them is not like overtaking or something like that. You're only going to be able to do that when you finish a chapter. And so depending on, your actual writing, that might not happen but once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And so, you don't want to just do that once and then be like it works or it doesn't because you don't know, right? You want to be able to pick a certain number of times to do that in order to get to a place where you can properly evaluate. It's going to depend on the piece of writing advice. It's going to depend on how long it takes for you to iterate on that piece of advice, to do it over and over again, so that it's not just one data point. You want to have a number of data points. And once you have done it all that number of times, you want to sit down and decide, did this help? Did this hurt, right? Like, you've been writing or having trouble writing up until now. Like if you're a writer, you're either thinking about writing or actually writing or putting off writing. Those are probably the 3 things now. But anyway, you have some experience with writing. And so you look at, okay, I did these things, and now I feel like that helped a little bit, like it worked, right? Now I'm writing every day except Friday. I wrote every day except Friday, and just like it got me into the habit, and I was doing really great. Or I could not sit down and write every day. I'd start out the week really strong. Monday was great, and then Tuesday I could get it, and then by the time I got to Wednesday, it just didn't work anymore, right? And knowing that, taking into account the fact that it's going to be a change. So there's going to be some difficulty in it just in general. It might take you a week to get into the habit of it, and then once you get into the habit of it, it's great. And then when you've come up with whether or not it helped or not, you decide whether or not you're going to keep using it. If it helped and you love the new schedule of writing whatever your writing thing is, then keep it up. If it helps you, that's great. If it doesn't help you, then lose it, right? And that, of course, is with the caveat that sometimes you get good writing advice and it's good for you, but it's not at the right time. I could be in a place where right now I've got a whole bunch of other things that I need to do and I can't sit down 6 days a week and write. But then when that kind of clears up a little bit, I might be able to go back to writing 6 days a week. And there'll be advice like that where you kind of want to keep it on the back burner And if you reach a place with your writing where you're like, oh, I'm just so stuck and I'm not getting anything done and this, that, and the other thing, right? Like, you can go back and try pieces of advice that kind of worked. Or maybe, like, they sort of worked but didn't work entirely, or you just think that it would be a good thing to try again. Saying no to advice never means, well, I don't want to say never. Saying no to advice doesn't always mean forever. Each book is different, and each time you sit down, you're a different person. And each time you sit down, you are writing, you might be writing the same book, but you're in a new place. You might be writing a new book, and that means that the advice that works for you is going to change. Yay. Because it certainly makes it a little bit harder. And at the end of the day, advice is just that. It's advice. If it works for you and it helps you, then use it. If it doesn't help, if it hurts your productivity or your mental state or your whatever, then just toss it aside. Like, there are definitely writers out there where they write, like, I don't even know how they do it, but they write thousands of words a day and consistently write 1,000 words a day. Like, I'm not one of those people. I cannot do that. I think my upper limit was I wrote 3,000 in one day one time, and then I couldn't write for a week or so. There are people who can do that, and there are people who can't do that. You never want to hang on to one piece of advice because you think that's the only thing that's going to make you successful. It's not. There's so many different ways to write a book. There's so many different schedules you can have, so many different habits you can develop, so many different media on which you can produce your writing. Like, sticking to one thing, it just doesn't work because every writer is different. When you find that way that works for yourself, hallelujah, angels sing, confetti, it's great. And then you might sit down on the next book and it won't work anymore. It's just the way that it goes. And so part of the advice that I'm giving you is the ability to figure out which advice is working for you when, so that you can be as productive as you possibly can be. I would like to give you a little bit of a homework, and that is to go out and find a piece of writing advice from someone that you should be taking writing advice from, and give it a try with your writing. If it's something like having candles, like lighting some candles so that you have a very nice ambiance in your writing space. If it's trying out a different writing space, like someone saying, oh yeah, I work really good at Starbucks, and you're like, I might be able to write at Starbucks, right? Go out and try it for a little while, and see how it goes. Write down, right, writers, write down how it's going for you. Doesn't have to be long. It can be, this sucked. I hate Starbucks. It smells like coffee. But go ahead and give it a try, and then come back and let me know how it went for you in the comments. Remember that success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. Happy writing. I'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.